Shalom, I'm Dr. Prince Maurice Parker, and welcome to our Bible study. And in this study, I'm giving an introduction to the book of Genesis, and I'm calling this series of studies, Understanding Genesis. Thus far, we've covered the first 3 days of creation, and we've given several schools of thoughts and postulations on those, and we want to discuss those because we're studying, we're looking at we're approaching the book of Genesis, especially chapter 1, from several different concepts and perspectives, just so that you can have an understanding of what the scriptures actually say, or what some people say they say, and correct understandings and schools of thought, which are just like Calvinism and Arminianism and pre or post tribulations. They don't bear on your salvation, but it could bear or affect directly how you understand scriptures. And what we want to do is present things that clarify the scriptures and help you understand, so you don't have doubts or questions or contradictions later on. And this is what happens so many times in scripture, especially about the book of Genesis, things that people do not understand, and they've been taught in an innocent way, with several things that actually are not in harmony exegetically with what the scriptures are actually trying to inform us. And it's not a malicious intent, it's just what we call, I pronounce the word with, from a Latin perspective, eisegesis. Some people say eisegesis, but when I say eisegesis, you know, we're talking about eisegesis. And so like in exegesis, we look into the historical setting, the sociocultural setting, the geological setting, and of course the philological setting, the languages, the original languages. And one of the things that as an exegete we hold all important is that what we hold as inerrant aren't the translations, but what we call the autographs, the original manuscripts. The original languages are the languages of authority. So even though sometimes I'll reference the Septuagint, which is the Old Testament that's translated into Greek, and it was readily used by the New Testament church, the Septuagint is a translation from the Tanakh, which is the Hebrew Old Testament. So I'll go to the Hebrew Old Testament to verify what the Septuagint says. And so like we take a look at that, or say, for example, the New Testament in the Latin text, or even the Old Testament from the Latin, the Vulgate. I like to study the Vulgate. I read the Vulgate several times a week, not every day, but just about every day. I do studies in the Vulgate, as I do in the Tanakh and the Hebrew and the Greek New Testament, the Koine Greek. And so like, but we look at those to understand the various translations. There are some that are better than others, and no translation, I consider, this is just Dr. Parker talking, I don't consider any translation as the best, or it depends on what I'm studying, because translators are human, and so like they might get some areas, according to my understanding, are very correct, but in other parts weak, and another translation will get it right, because the judge is, I'm not the judge, or I'll take a look at what it says in the original manuscripts, or that is, as I said, the autographs. When I talk about the autographs, I'm not talking about some famous guy that signed a napkin. No, we're talking about the original manuscripts, or the original languages. So that's what we base things, we base our interpretations or understandings on. That's what it should be, not on the English translations. Naturally, apart from the autographs, my natural Bible studies done first in Spanish, just about all in Spanish, and all the different translations in Spanish, and then all the different translations in English. And I have no preference as far as translations as a whole, but certain verses I think really get it. You know, these translators got that right on the nose. So we're going to talk about, now we're going into the fourth day of creation, and I'm going to present a school of thought just to give you something to think about and understand. And I'm going to present scriptural background, And I'm going to use, we're giving an English Bible study here, so I'm going to use various English translations that will express what I feel is closer what the Hebrew says in these cases. So please, if you have any questions or comments or ideas, this is just to express perhaps a doubt, or you want to understand something clear, write a comment below, and we'll see if we can address that in a future time. Now we're going to go to Genesis chapter 1. We're going to go on the fourth day. God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens." As we talked about in the last study, there's the expanse that is just the sky that we see here, where the birds fly, and in our day, the airplanes fly, and we have what we call the environment that allows life here. And it says, but here it talks about another expanse. It says, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night. And let there be signs for seasons and for days and years. And let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth." Now remember, it talks about giving light upon the earth, but light itself was created day one. And here we're talking about the creation, or I'm talking about, I think it's the application here is the effectual use, the effect that these heavenly bodies are having upon life on the earth, like in the oceans, or the waters that we talked about in the prior day, in day 3. Now, without ocean currents that the moon affects, and that here the lights of the heaven, both the heat and different things, affects the currents, and that maintains the oceans and all water. Stagnant water only dies. And so, or it doesn't promote healthy life. Other forms of life, but not the other forms of life that really bring vibrancy and abundance. And so here, and also it's the worst type of water. Stagnant water is the worst type of water that, at least for human health, as we are today, for us to consume. So taking a look at these things, we find now on the fourth day, we have the sun and the moon, and they're giving life to the earth also. And God made two great lights, these two in particular: the greater light of the day, that is our sun, and the lesser light of the night, which doesn't produce its own light. It only reflects the light of the sun and the stars. And God set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And I want to bring up a little application as far as our life is concerned, and a message from Christ to us about the sun and the moon. As I mentioned a moment ago, the sun is the emitter of light in our solar system, the main emitter of light. Of course, a full moon shines, and I love full moons, how they light up the night. They're just gorgeous, full moons. But the light is not theirs. You see, we are like the moon. We have no light of our own. The light of Christ in us is what gives light to others in the midst of darkness. Even in the midst of our own darkness, if we're shining the light of Christ, we still give hope and light to others. We can shine that light. And the moon represents that. It talks about a light that in the night. That's the moon, and that's really who we are. We are dependent upon something far greater than us, and the light that should shine from us, Jesus said, we are the light of the world. We have not a source of our own light. Christ is the light in us. The Bible also says Christ in us is the hope of glory. So I just wanted to say that parenthetically about that light that shines in the night, which has no light of its own, but reflects the light of a greater source. And that's us reflecting the light of Christ. Continuing it with the study. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning the fourth day. Now, there's no doubt that Genesis chapter 1, verses 14 and 19, teaches that God created the heavenly bodies on the fourth day, the sun, the moon, and the stars. Okay, we've already seen in verses 1 and 2 that all that began long before this. Now it's creating an effect on the earth where life exists. We can see it, we can appreciate it, it all works in harmony, it all works together. And this includes all that the James Webb Telescope allows us to see. I mean, God is not surprised by this. God created that. So this is gorgeous. And so these are the celestial bodies in the universe that God created. He is the creator of everything, and everything began with him. So all of that. We talk about the fourth day because that's when the effect on earth that helps sustain life, all of it works together. And as we have seen, Dr. Thomas Chalmers, how he presented the gap theory that the angels were created long before the first day in Genesis 1. As we've discussed earlier, we discussed that in another study. I'm going to present another thought. He positioned that Satan's rebellion between verses 1 and 2 of Genesis 1 occurred. We also observed the exegetical implausibility of his well-known hypothesis, the gap theory, or the ruin restoration theory. However, when we study the subject contextually, we find that the angels were created to serve humanity. The angels were not created for some long eternity past from a world that was destroyed and just kind of were left over, so you might as well serve these guys. No, I remember once I used that as an example that if somebody had been engaged to a woman prior and you gave her a ring and all of a sudden things went south or perhaps she rejected it and he sees another woman, he says, "Oh, will you marry me? I got this ring." You know, it's kind of like, no, God didn't give us leftovers. God created what is created for us. He created it for us. He didn't give us leftovers. So let's take a look at this. But God never said to any of the angels, this is telling you about the angels were created to be our servants, weren't created for another purpose, and then we just happen to come along. But God never said to any of the angels, sit in the highest position in heaven until I make your enemies your footstool. He never promised any victory for the angels in that sense. What are all the angels? They are spirits sent to serve those who are going to receive salvation. In other words, angels are our servants according to Hebrews chapter 1, verses 13 and 14. That's the God's Word translation. Now, angels were created to be our servants. Were they created in some eternity past before the creation of the world? No, I believe they're part of the creation. I believe they are created creatures. They're part of the creation that were created to serve man.
Introducing the new Xulon Press book, Is Our Gospel the Gospel? By Dr. Prince Maurice Parker. Is Our Gospel the Gospel? Is available in Christian bookstores and online. Purchase it today.